everyone in Gaza is hungry. And this comes from the UN, and I've taken this report from the UN website. Everyone in Gaza is hungry. Skipping meals is the norm, and each day is a desperate search for sustenance. Well over 1 million people are now seeking refuge and safety in the already overcrowded southern city of Rafah, according to the UNRWA. Hundreds of thousands of people are sleeping in the open with inadequate clothing or materials to keep out the cold. And this is the bit that I want to concentrate on today, just here. Undernourished children are at particular risk, while half of Gaza's population is starving. And that comes from the UN. They've warned in line with the latest food insecurity assessment, which I guess comes back to it doesn't matter whether those people in that area have money or not. There is no food. Joining me now is someone who's truly amazing, done amazing work all over the world. Jean Michel Grand is the Chief Executive of Action Against Hunger. He's been Executive Director of Action Against Hunger UK since 2003. He started his career in the humanitarian sector in 1994 as a logistician during the Bosnian War. He spent the following years working in humanitarian crises such as Chechnya, northern Rakhine State, Malawi, Zimbabwe. The list goes on. Over the past 2 decades, Jean Michel has dedicated his efforts to addressing child malnutrition around the world and helping communities affected by humanitarian disasters or wars. In this case, Jean Michel Grand joins me now. Jean Michel, it is hard for people in the West, not everybody, because there are still families living on 1 meal a day. And as awful as it is, 1 meal a day, knowing that there is food somewhere, even in a food bank, is different to 1 meal a day when there just is no food, isn't it?
Exactly, and I think that as you mentioned, Trisha, about your experience in Tanzania when there was some famine, it's exactly the situation today where you have the entire population. We are not speaking about half, 30%. It's the entire population of the Gaza Strip, which is facing a minimum what we call a food crisis, and some of them it's even worse. So there is a serious risk of a famine within the next few months if the situation is continuing to deteriorate, both in terms of hostility, the war, and as well in terms of the restricted humanitarian access that we are experiencing today. And there is, as you say, there is less and less food available. Whatever the money you have, there is no food coming into the country. Onto the place, and that's really, really an alarming situation, and that's why the report, and we have been contributed to this report, is really raising the alarm of a potential famine in the coming months.
Yeah, and when we talk about just no food being around, we shouldn't forget, because I remember again my experience, and I could get out of that situation, is no water. You know, when you think, we don't think twice, even, God forbid, if you're going hungry in the West, in Britain, and there are many families that are, you have access to drinking water. What is the situation as far as drinking or drinking water, consumable water in the area?
But there is no more. All the desalination structure have been shut down, and the water points, every water point providing safe water have been destroyed. And this we have to, it's difficult for all to realize, but people have been displaced multiple times, and there is not a single place which is safe today in Gaza. So every movement, every time that people are going to the streets, to a shop, to queue for 4 to 6 hours to the bakery, or trying to get water, if there is any water point still working, is at risk. There is not a single safe place. And so What we have today is that we have an increasing number of diarrhea and a public health threat because people are drinking unsafe water.
You forget. You think, do you know, I remember I remember talking with a man whose only access to water was from puddles, and praying it would rain so he could drink from puddles. Can you explain, because here's the difficulty, Jean Michel, and I'm sure you'd understand this. When we talk, especially around this very this situation has created a lot of strong feelings. When we talk about masses of people, they're dehumanized almost. You know, we don't think of the individual. I think as a mother, I can think of a baby or a child. But what does this level of hunger and thirst, what does it do to a person? Because I'm just trying to think, even in that short time I experienced it, the anxiety, the panic, I have to say my companion drank water out of a tap that was not clean, and long story short, came down with dysentery, and I was lucky I could get him airlifted. He had to be airlifted out of the area. He was close to death. But what does it do physically and mentally to people, to children, to not have any access to food or water?
This is the biggest stress that any parents can face in life, not to be able to face their children. So we have here a situation where people are living in fears every single day, fears to be bombed, to be killed, fears not to be able to give any food to their children. I'm not even speaking about medicines. I'm not speaking about nutritious food. So it's a daily struggle, and people have to queue to go to the bakery for 4 to 6 hours. And most of the time they are coming with nothing, especially in the north, there is no more. They have to consume wild food in some cases. So it's a massive stress. So our parents are living in angst, and the trauma is something that is very, very, very difficult for us to even imagine. And it's 2.2 million people who are going through this situation today. And as a result, even if the parents are prioritizing their children, and they are doing that, that's why many adults are skipping meal or providing the few clean water they can have, either by boiling or finding to the children. The younger children are the priority, like we will do, like any parent will do. But this situation will mean that the child, step by step, is very likely to become malnourished. And we are very, very concerned that we are going to face cases of severe malnutrition in the next few weeks or months if the situation doesn't improve, if the siege is not lifted. There is nothing coming into it. It's not the few 100 trucks of humanitarian aid going into the country. That's far from being enough to provide any support at scale commensurate to the needs. So this is people living in fear. It's survival. I think that's the point. People are living on survival on every day, not knowing what tomorrow is going to be.
Yeah, and when you say about a parent, I think the thing is, we know as mums, every mum and dads out there will know, when your child is hungry, you know, you in the West, you know, your child starts crying, oh, they're hungry, but you know that can be rectified. But we know with babies that they'll cry and cry and cry and cry, and then they'll go silent. And that is the scary thing. And also, I'm thinking with breastfeeding mothers who don't have access to water, as you will know, in many areas, their milk goes, right?
Exactly. And we have a report of many cases of mothers who have stopped breastfeeding because they are themselves not receive enough nutritious food or clean water or enough water to do that. And the period of time between 6 months to 59 months, or the first 2 years of the life of a child are the most critical time where they are developing their capacities. And if they are going through the shock like today, many of these young children are going, it might affect their capacity, their development for the future. So it's not only today for these young children, that's their future, which is also at stake today and at risk, at severe risk today.
Yeah. Yeah, and so, I mean, you mentioned some, well, we've talked about, and we know that there's some aid going in there, but it is a drop in the ocean, isn't it? I mean, what, it sounds like a stupid question. What is the answer? If we need to get food to people, as you said, 2.5 million people, they need feeding, they need now. What is the answer?
I think they are, let's say, 4 points today to be able for people to receive enough potentially food to have access. The first one, that the parties should agree to a ceasefire and to ensure the protection of the civilian population. People cannot move. There is no safe place, not a single safe place. Hospital has been bombed, schools, refugee camps. First of all is to get the security so that the people, they can live protected, they feel protected. That's the first thing. The second one is that the civilian, these mothers and children and their families should not be targeted. They're civilians. And so there has to be a respect of the international law. And to come back to the food coming into the country, there is a blockade today. This is a country which is, the Gaza Strip is on the siege. This blockade needs to be unlocked. The crossing points should be open for the humanitarian aid and as well as the commercial, the private sector are coming with food. We need to have this crossing point open for the humanitarian assistance, food, water, medicines to come into the country. For the moment, this is a drop in the sea. It's 100 trucks going for an entire population which is in survival mode. This is not enough, and we should not accept that. This is not about war. This is cross-border, this border point. This is about opening up and making sure that the assistance behind is going to be safely distributed. And humanitarian workers are paying the price today. They are also targeted. So the humanitarian workers need to be respected and protected.
Thank you, Jean Michel, for highlighting, helping me highlight such a desperate situation.
Thank you, Trisha.
Jean Michel Grand, who's Chief Executive Action Against Hunger, and his sole interest is getting food to people who need food, to civilian populations. Back in just a moment.